Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Witcher 2 Dark Difficulty video walkthrough. This is Chapter 2, and this mission is Subterranean Life. So once you're over here, in this place, which I believe is called Vergen, you're going to be talking to the dwarf guys, and you're going to get a mission to go into the mines. As you can see, it's there underneath the map. Descend into the lower passages to get the Immortale, or whatever the hell that word is, immortal something. I can't quite read it on my low-resolution preview screen. But as with a lot of these side quests, they're going to take you through some dungeons, and the dungeons on these games, or on this game I should say, are an interesting breed. It's one of those things where it's very easy to get into the rhythm of the combat and to win. But if you come up against something you weren't expecting, or you get mobbed by accident, you're pretty much dead. You'll die in seconds. It's really quick. And this place is no different, and it also has the rot fiends, which blow up when they die and do an insane amount of damage to you. So, as per normal, you'll notice I'm going to be using Ard a lot to try and get the criticals. I'm also going to be evasive, and I've also done 2 potions to increase my damage against this kind of enemy. And the rot fiends themselves are not too bad as long as you don't let them blow up on you, like that guy. And if you get lucky with Ard, which it's all RNG at the end of the day, you can get the executions on them, kill them very quickly. But by now, if you haven't learnt that the key to success is hitting and running, you're probably having a tougher time than you really should be. And this is an instance where you do have a team of dudes with you, which is the dwarf guys, and they're actually very useful because they're big distractions, which is super effective in some fights. In fact, there's a boss of this area coming up later on, which is this giant horned demon creature, and I barely have to do anything because I can't do anything. There's that many dwarfs blocking it in and attacking it that I physically can't hurt it. And at the time, it was very frustrating as a player, but you realise it's actually helping you out because it's alleviating the risk. And it is kind of strange that they don't let you do stuff like this on your own, but I'm grateful that the dwarfs are here because it mixes it up a little bit. The combat on this game, as some people have probably noticed, is pretty repetitive. It's still enjoyable once you get into the flow of it, but there's really not that much skill to it, and I'm hoping that The Witcher 3 fixes that, even though it has been delayed, which I kind of saw coming. But you might be wondering why these guys are setting on fire. That has to do with the rune that I have on my sword. It's one of the passive abilities of it, a passive trait. And just make sure you're nowhere near these enemies when they die. You'll notice the NPCs are fine. They don't seem to take any damage off that crazy explosion. But that can kill you. Being too close to those explosions can be instant death. But I haven't done a Witcher 2 commentary in a while because we've been super busy with other things. And I want to try and get this guide finished, even though, you know, it's all recorded. I just have to do the talking. And it's longer than you think when you break it down the way I've done, and I think it's due to how much the game loads. Like, you're not seeing too much of that because I'm trimming it out, and it's making the game look like a significantly better game than it is. But when you play it yourself on anything but the PC, it loads all the time. It's incredibly poorly optimized when it comes to loading, and it's a shame too because it definitely takes you out of the game, and it can get really tedious. But this is an example of a spawn where the enemies aren't already there, they get out of the ground, which is probably the most dangerous kind, on top of Geralt doing his own thing and end up getting me in trouble just then. Because as I've already mentioned, you can't control the swings that he does, you can only control when they happen. So if he decides to be flamboyant, a la Arkham City / Arkham Asylum style, sometimes you can get hurt, you can take damage, and it does feel a little bit unfair. But I've just been playing Watch Dogs to give some people some context as when this commentary is happening, as I'm looting all this stuff. You already know this, folks. You've got to grab everything you can, because if you're not using it to upgrade something, you're using it to sell to get the orans to upgrade something. It's an economy funded on looting, and it's really fun to do. And it's nowhere near as complicated as it looks. A lot of people seem to be intimidated by this game, but if you just play, folks, you'll figure it out. It's pretty simple stuff, and just be grateful that they streamlined a lot of it, because Witcher 1, now that game is confusing. This one, nowhere near the same kind of just over-the-top, superfluous PC nonsense. But here's a Rot Fiend with some Rot Fiends with a greater Rot Fiend. Once again, you can hit your teammates with your ARDs, which can get very frustrated because it does waste them. And you'll notice that there's not really much I can do here, because if I start jumping in, I might get trapped and end up taking unnecessary damage, which I don't want to do. I can't quite remember if you can save anywhere on this game, but I get the feeling that you can. And it's one of those things where whenever I'm recording a guide, unless it's a stealth-based game where saving is, you know, tantamount to surviving, I don't save as often as I probably should, because I realise at the time it's more editing to do, and anything that streamlines the process is obviously a good thing. But what we're doing here, and I actually do this particular mission not to the best of my ability, because there's another mission here of blocking all the tunnels to stop the Rot Fiends from turning up. And to do it, you just go through the dungeon naturally and examine the holes and place bombs in them if you have them. And I don't do this. I think I do it to 2 of them and not the full 3. So I miss out on getting some extra experience. And it's one of those things where I do go down the tunnel that leads to this particular objective. I just don't do what the game requests of me, because I was too busy kind of trying to rush it to get to the good stuff, which is the main missions. And a lot of this stuff is kind of fillery. As you can see, I'm running around a very nondescript mine, chopping up enemies. You've already seen me kill dozens of times. And yeah, this game, very manageable. It's super challenging at first, because you don't really know how to fight. You don't really know, you know, what the enemies do. You don't know your strengths. But once you get them, the only times where the game really spikes in difficulty is if you get completely gangbanged by a big group, or if you come up against, for instance, the dragon boss can be quite a difficulty spike if you're not prepared for it. But for the most, you know, the game is just... Dark mode is kind of a fun difficulty. It's not as fun as it could be, but I think once you understand it, you'll enjoy it a lot more. And there's a lot of difficulties like that, a lot of difficulties where at first you just think they're shitty, you just think they're kind of unfair and rough and callous, and then later on you grow to appreciate them once you understand them a little better. And those early feelings are just natural. They're the natural response to a game kicking your ass. And it's an ignorance that's not necessarily a negative thing, it's just a natural thing. As I'm checking in my menus here, you'll notice I keep the menus in on this game because it's important to see what I'm doing, just to know what I'm using. And as I've mentioned, a lot of people find this game quite confusing, so if I can alleviate some of that confusion by showing you what I'm doing, hopefully it'll benefit the guide in the long run. It's just a shame that this game is flying under the radar. Everybody seems to think, you know, Dark Souls and your Skyrim and Oblivion kind of games are the only dark fantasy that you can get, when The Witcher's, while not as high profile as those titles, is a really good game. It's a really good series too, and I'm hoping that the Wild Hunt really brings, you know, into the forefront of these adult fantasy games, because I think it's better than the Elder Scrolls stuff. And I know that's a controversial opinion, but that's just because I've never really enjoyed those games. I'm a Fallout fan. I can't do with the fantasy stuff. It just seems to be really tedious for me. And I think it stems from the combat, which I've mentioned before. If Skyrim's combat were as good as its universe and all the effort they put into making those worlds and all the cool stuff that's in them, that game would be infinitely more playable. But to me, mashy, trashy combat is just boring. Like, it doesn't make me want to play it. And this game here, you could accuse it of having kind of mashy combat, but the evade makes it so much more interesting, because there's a responsiveness to it that you don't really get in the Elder Scrolls games. And I'm not going to compare this or Elder Scrolls to Dark Souls or the Souls genre, because those games are just, for me personally, obviously this is an opinion, sky high above those other ones, because they do what I like, and that's what it's all about, guys, you know. My friend Aiden absolutely adores Skyrim and Oblivion and Morrowind and all those other ones. Like, those games to him occupy a very special place in his heart, and he can just spend hours in those worlds, and there's a lot of people that are like that, and I kind of feel like I'm missing out on the fact I can't do that. And I understand exactly what it is. I get very burnt out on fantasy quick unless it's dark and different, and this is not me trying to slight, you know, the writing or the fantasy of those games. They don't scratch the itch that I like. You know, I need to have a hook for me to get really deep into it. This fight particularly here, I don't know why I said particularly. Lots of enemies, very dangerous. But, as you just saw, you can get creative, you can maintain, and you can kick their ass pretty quickly, which is... I don't know, the combination of art to execution is my favourite aspect of the combat in this game, but because I can't control it, it will forever be lesser than it could be. Like, you know, if it was based off of a timing, so that you could guarantee when to get the criticals, I would be in love with the combat, but as it stands, it's run-of-the-mill, really. But we've got about 6 minutes left on this dungeon, and it's pretty much the same stuff. So I'm going to go back to talking about Watch Dogs, and hopefully people aren't here asking for, you know, play-by-play commentary, because this is really simple. But I was just playing it on my PC. A buddy of mine brought it round. I was like, why not see if I can run it? And when I ran it, I decided to give it a bash. And it's a good game. It's an interesting game. It looks really nice, even though my PC can't handle it on Ultra, which I was a bit sad about. But it turns out it's poorly optimized and it's a massive hardware hog. So if you're having difficulties running it with good frame rate and good settings, then you're pretty much with everybody else, because it seems to be a bit of an arsehole to get that. But I've got it at max resolution. You know, I've got it running about 40 frames, Fraps was telling me, 40 frames per second. It fluctuates between, you know, mid-30s to mid-40s, which is decent enough when you come from console games. I mean, it's going to piss off the optimized guys, but I can deal with that. And I played up to the first, is it Fixer moment, where the game is introducing you to the concept of the invasions. You might be wondering what's happening there when I get hit. There are man traps everywhere. Bear traps, sorry. And it takes so long to fuck about with them. I just take the damage because the damage is so minuscule. You'll just regenerate it. Obviously, earlier on in the game, bit of a big deal, the traps, but not so much later on once you've got yourself equipped a little bit. But Watch Dogs has this system where you get invaded, or you try to invade, very similar to Dark Souls, and depending on the game mode that you're doing, you're going to go into someone else's world and you're going to either try to kill them or hack them or something along those lines. And it seems like an interesting thing, but I don't know. Like, the reason it works in Dark Souls is because the game is tailored for one-on-one combat. The biggest problem with sandbox games is they don't really do anything well. They do lots of things to a good caliber, but they don't do anything masterfully. That's the sacrifice that has to be made on that genre of game. And Watch Dogs plays good. You know, it's got some decent aiming controls, decent movement, decent enough driving. You know, the traversal is okay, but when it comes to fighting another human in that environment, you're definitely going to see the holes in the game. Like, I've already seen the holes in the game fighting the AI, because there's a lot of chasing that you do, and when you're chasing someone on foot, it's really tedious. And coming from the developers who made Assassin's Creed, which kind of took chasing to that next level of the parkour, it seems kind of strange that they've reined it in for this title. So a lot of the times, you just feel like two idiots running at the same speed and never getting any closer to each other. And later on in the game, you're able to, you know, to mitigate that kind of stuff with hacks and what have you. But some of the early chase sequences, if you mess them up, it's better to restart than it is to chase these people, because it takes like 10 minutes to catch them, and it's the most anticlimactic thing ever. And it just seems really, really strange. And there's probably going to be instances where you have super amazing, awesome invasion moments with another player where it gets super hectic and it's a fantastic highlight. But for every fantastic highlight, you're probably going to get a really tedious, chasey, hide-and-seeky bullshit experience. So I have no idea if it's going to turn out to be a good game mode or a bad one. But as it stands, it's a sandbox game, you know. It's it's not quite got the ambition or the wide scope of your Grand Theft Autos, but it's Ubisoft, you know, throwing their cards in and saying this is our iteration of that kind of game, and if that's what you like, there's probably a lot to enjoy. But I think I was expecting something more. I was expecting a game changer, and the hacking seems cool, you know, the storyline seems cool, the situations that they've had me in so far have not been groundbreaking, but they've been interesting enough to tell me that later on the game probably gets a lot better. But it just seems like a sandbox game. But here is I think he's called a Bulvor, and as much as I would love to fight this boss, there really is not any point in doing so, because I'm going to get cock-blocked by my team, and it's a real bad situation. And the sad part here is, if you hit that dude with Ard, I believe you can instantly kill him if you get very, very lucky. And I just don't get the opportunity because my team get in the way, so this is a very frustrating fight for me, as the Bulvor wants to kill me but can't get to me because of the clipping, and I can't get to him because of my team. It's just a really shitty situation. And I mean, look, what am I supposed to do? I can't hit it, and the more I try, it's going to hit me, and it'll do much more damage than I'm doing, so I just decide to let them do it and kind of bide my time. It's a casualty of its own game design. Why did they put this creature in this tiny room? Like, look there. Oh, I thought that was it then. But if you do have the... is it Chi? I can't remember what they call it on this game. The magic ability. You'll notice I have the 2 bars. The best thing to do with those when you've got them full, as this guy jingles in my face, is to start your combo. The moment the enemy responds and tries to attack you, interrupt him with Ard. Continue comboing him. As soon as he recovers and goes to attack you, interrupt him with Ard. It's so good. You know, I can't even get over how important it is. And if you level your character accordingly, you can have a lot of those cubes that allow you to do more Ards. More Ards, more damage, more better, more awesome. You know, you become a killing machine. Which is why later on in the game, even though technically games should get more difficult as they get towards the end, this game gets easier because your Geralt gets stronger, and when Geralt is strong, he kicks ass, and it's a good feeling going from getting gangbanged by Neckers in that cave at the beginning in Flotsam to smashing a dragon. So it's pretty fun stuff. But thank you for watching, guys. I do apologise that this has been a long time in coming, and I know there's a couple of guys that are really interested in this guide because they're Witcher fans, but hopefully it's been worth the wait, and as always, you take care now.